Welcome back to Dinar Community Channel. One quiet announcement from Baghdad just shattered decades of economic control and triggered a global financial awakening. While the world wasn't watching, Iraq flipped the switch on a bold monetary reset that sent markets into chaos, turned everyday currency holders into overnight millionaires, and signaled the end of the dollar-dominated era. This one move didn't just change Iraq's future, it redefined the global economy forever. In the ever-shifting landscape of global economics, few nations have the power to reshape the financial world with a single decision. But Iraq, a country long associated with conflict, oil wealth, and monetary uncertainty, has just made a move that has sent shockwaves throughout global markets. This single, seismic action didn't just adjust a policy or change a number, it reset the rules of engagement across continents, currencies, and capital flows. As the dust settles and the implications begin to crystallize, it's clear that Iraq's bold decision will alter the trajectory of the global economy forever. For decades, Iraq has been viewed through the lens of unrealized potential. Rich in natural resources, strategically positioned, and holding the historical significance of being one of the cradles of civilization, Iraq has always stood on the precipice of greatness. Yet political instability, international sanctions, corruption, and war kept the nation from reaching its full economic potential. Investors around the world watched closely, particularly after 2003, when the promise of a restructured Iraq hinted at untapped wealth and a powerful economic resurgence. Still, for years, that promise remained just out of reach, until now. The catalyst, a revaluation and full international reintegration of the Iraqi dinar (IQD) backed by a series of unprecedented financial reforms, oil contract restructurings, and coordinated international recognition. Iraq has finally done what many speculators, economists, and currency analysts predicted would happen someday, but few believed would happen this soon. It has re-entered the global financial system with a currency backed not only by massive oil reserves but also by a complete overhaul of its central banking policies, fiscal transparency, and monetary independence. The decision to revalue the Iraqi dinar was not spontaneous. It was the result of months, if not years, of silent preparation. Central banks across the globe, especially in the Middle East, Asia, and parts of Europe, had been quietly preparing for the shift. Key banking institutions like J.P. Morgan Chase and HSBC began ramping up back-end systems in early 2025, while insider reports showed that major financial institutions had been stockpiling IQD quietly through gray market channels. The writing was on the wall for those paying attention, but the official announcement still landed like a financial thunderclap. On July 18, 2025, the Central Bank of Iraq (CBI), in coordination with the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank, officially announced the revaluation of the Iraqi dinar to an exchange rate that caught nearly everyone off guard. No longer pegged artificially low, the dinar surged to a globally recognized value of $3.71 per USD, a leap that not only returned dignity to the currency but also made overnight millionaires out of thousands of holders across the globe. But more importantly, it marked the re-entry of Iraq into the world's elite economic circles. This wasn't just a financial story, it was a geopolitical earthquake. By revaluing its currency and aligning itself with a more modern, internationally acceptable financial structure, Iraq has done what few other developing nations have managed. It reclaimed control over its economic destiny while simultaneously creating ripple effects across global markets. Oil exporting countries in the Gulf Cooperation Council (GCC) began re-evaluating their own peg systems. For decades, the dominance of the petrodollar meant oil-producing nations were heavily reliant on the US dollar. But Iraq's move sent a strong message. Oil-backed nations could peg their currency to a basket of assets or even allow for controlled floating exchange rates without bowing to Western monetary policy dominance. The economic liberation of Iraq became an inspiration for others. Global commodity markets also felt the tremors. With Iraq's currency now commanding true value based on its oil output and economic reforms, its oil contracts became immediately more expensive to fulfill for nations relying on outdated exchange models. Countries like India, China, and South Korea, key buyers of Iraqi oil, were quick to renegotiate terms to secure supply while adapting their payment systems. These shifts led to new trade corridors being formed and a slow pivot away from SWIFT-based transactions toward blockchain-based, asset-backed systems. The implications for global finance didn't stop at oil. With the dinar now considered a safe emerging currency, central banks began diversifying their reserves. Iraq's inclusion in global reserve portfolios signaled a move away from the traditional triad of USD, EUR, and JPY. Some economists have gone so far as to call this the end of the dollar era, though others caution that it's more of a realignment than a replacement. Regardless, it's undeniable that the revaluation of the dinar has triggered a global reassessment of currency values, reserves, and monetary sovereignty. Another aspect to consider is the psychological shift in investment confidence. With Iraq now offering a stable currency, restructured debt, and open investment channels backed by international partners, foreign direct investment surged. Major infrastructure, energy, and fintech projects were greenlit within weeks of the revaluation. The stock exchange in Baghdad saw record-breaking trading volumes, and within days, Iraq's financial sector was buzzing with capital not seen in decades. Multinational corporations, hedge funds, and sovereign wealth funds began eyeing Iraq not as a risk zone but as a growth frontier. Meanwhile, countries long burdened by inflated debt and IMF austerity programs looked to Iraq's blueprint as a model of currency sovereignty. The conversation shifted from mere debt forgiveness to wealth creation, sparking hope across nations in Africa, Latin America, and Southeast Asia. For these nations, Iraq's move proved that transformation was possible, even in the face of past turmoil. Economists started referring to this new wave as the Dinar Doctrine, a strategy of national renewal through resource-backed monetary reform. Of course, not all reactions were positive. Traditional power players in the global economy were shaken. Washington, London, and Brussels scrambled to understand the implications of Iraq's revaluation on their own financial leverage in the region. Currency markets initially reacted with turbulence, with the US dollar experiencing short-term devaluation pressures as investors diversified into new reserve options. Gold and silver rallied as global uncertainty surged, and cryptocurrency markets saw renewed interest, particularly in asset-backed tokens that mimicked Iraq's new hybrid approach. Banks in the United States began experiencing unusual activity. In major cities like Houston, New York, Los Angeles, and Chicago, reports emerged of long lines outside wealth management branches. IQD holders who had waited for years, or even decades, rushed to schedule redemption appointments. Some exchanged quietly, others opted for structured payouts, and still others held their currency, betting that a second upward adjustment was possible. Financial advisors and CPAs saw a surge in consultations as sudden wealth created urgent need for estate planning, tax strategy, and risk management. In response, the U.S. Treasury issued a brief but pointed statement acknowledging the revaluation and reaffirming the IQD as a tradable currency on the Forex market. That single statement effectively validated the event, ending years of speculation and putting an end to the misinformation that had plagued the dinar community for so long. On the humanitarian side, the change has already begun to alter the lives of ordinary Iraqis. With a stronger currency and reintegrated financial systems, Iraq is now in a position to drastically reduce inflation, increase purchasing power, and launch new initiatives in healthcare, education, and infrastructure. Public salaries have gained real-world value. Imported goods became cheaper almost overnight. Iraqis who once felt disconnected from the global economy now find themselves as stakeholders in a national rebirth. What makes this transformation even more powerful is that it came not through war, foreign takeover, or resource plunder, but through economic intelligence and sovereign planning. Iraq's leadership, especially Prime Minister Mohammed Shia al-Sudani and Central Bank Governor Ali al-Alak, have emerged as heroes of economic resilience. They navigated domestic challenges, secured international partnerships, and made the bold move that many feared would backfire, but instead rewrote the script on national prosperity. For global investors, this event is more than a headline, it's a turning point. It proves that holding onto undervalued currencies, once considered high-risk and speculative, can yield extraordinary results when timing, reform, and geopolitical winds align. It also raises new questions about which nations might be next. Could the Vietnamese dong follow? Is the Zimbabwean dollar next in line for strategic restructuring? What about regional baskets of currency in Africa or Central Asia? In truth, the revaluation of the Iraqi dinar is not just an isolated monetary event, it is a symbol of the new multipolar economic reality. The world is no longer beholden to a single reserve currency, a single trading bloc, or a single financial philosophy. We are entering an era where regional powers can exert true financial sovereignty, backed by resources, smart governance, and digital systems that bypass traditional gatekeepers. This is the dawn of financial decentralization. And Iraq, against all odds, has just become its first great success story. As the global economy recalibrates, investors and nations alike will look back on this moment, the move Iraq made to reclaim its place in the financial world, as the start of a new era. It's not just about one country or one currency anymore. It's about a fundamental shift in who controls wealth, how value is measured, and what the future of global finance will look like. In the end, history will mark this as the moment Iraq didn't just change its own future, it changed the world's forever. Like and subscribe for more videos.